Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's Kai, and today I have a very special video for you. This is going to be a chrome guide, so all about chrome, how to apply it, tips and tricks for longevity, how to isolate chrome, and some of my favorite products. The goal is to have kind of like an overall guide for people just getting started with chrome art because it is one of my favorite types of nail art. If that sounds good to you, please consider subscribing. If you are already subscribed, thank you so much for being here, and without too much more chit chat, let's get into the guide. So I wanted to start off by talking about the different types of chromes because there are many different types. They do vary in cost, but also in how you would apply them, what kinds of looks they are best for, and various use cases. So I just kind of wanted to review each of the different types, when is best to use them, what they look like, and how to recognize them. So if you're searching for chromes online, it might be easier to find what you're looking for. Starting first with your standard metallic chrome. So these chromes are going to be a single color and they're going to have a really nice luster and shine to them. They usually are on the more opaque side. So here you can see this is covering up the clear base pretty well. Applying them over black or white is going to have a slightly different effect. Usually they come in standard metallic colors, but you can also find them in solid colors like this one here. This one is just a cheaper option that I got off of Amazon, but you can see that the color here is very vivid, opaque, and really one-toned. The next kind of chrome that we'll talk about are pearl chromes. So these often are similar to metallics in that they're more so one-toned, these ones having more of like a silvery or white base to them. And this is how you get that glazed look that was really popular. This next type of chrome is often referred to as like a mermaid chrome or a unicorn chrome, and it's similar to a pearl except for instead of being single toned, it does have a duo shifting color to it. This one is a peach to blue, and it will look differently over white or black. The next type is an aurora chrome, and this also has a duo shifting color to it. This one is blue to yellow. However, these ones, unlike the unicorn chromes, have more of a clear base, so it really will shift depending on if you're using a white or black base color. And the last type of chrome I wanted to talk about are these kinds that come in the tube pre-mixed with usually alcohol or some sort of liquid to help with the application. While they are less messy, I personally am not the biggest fan of them, as typically when I've tried them out, the finish wasn't quite as shiny as normal chrome application. However, I also understand that they are less messy, so it really is up to your personal preference, and I have not tried every one on the market, so there could be differences there as well. Now let's talk about base colors, because the color that you use under a chrome can definitely change the overall look. I'm going to demonstrate this with a standard black and white base, but other colored bases can also have an effect. You'll see that the more metallic chromes that have that more opaque finish to them are going to be less affected, though that base color will shine through slightly, whereas with one of the aurora chromes or one of the duo shifting chromes, the base color is largely going to affect which color presents itself. Ultimately, with those types of chromes, my recommendation is that you experiment with different base colors before you go into designing your set. That way you don't waste time painting a whole base set of nails only to apply the chrome and having it not be the color that you wanted. Ultimately though, it is fun to experiment, so try out different base colors. Now let's talk about chrome quality. There is a difference in chrome quality sometimes. For example, this is a relatively cheap chrome that I got off of AliExpress, while this one is a more expensive brand, Bonnie B. The part of the price difference is that it is an import, and if we're looking at the cheaper chrome, it's hard to tell, but as I sift through it, I can tell that the powder is a little bit less fine when it comes to the cheaper brand, whereas the more expensive brand is quite a bit more finely milled and it sticks together. You can also see a color difference. The more expensive brand is darker in tone, whereas the cheaper brand is a little bit lighter. And sometimes this can come down to a cheaper brand adding other things rather than just the pigment powder to the packaging, just to make it less expensive since they're using less of the actual pigment. It really is a hit or miss when you order off of places like Amazon, AliExpress, whether or not you'll get something that is quality. These ones honestly are pretty comparable. I will say the more expensive brand is quite a bit brighter in person and less cloudy. If you're on a budget, the cheaper brands will work, but I do recommend to save up for the nicer chromes if possible, because I've noticed sometimes the application of cheaper brands is much more difficult. Speaking of which, let's start with just basic full nail application, going through troubleshooting and longevity. Now you do need to start with a non-wipe gel. This is the My&B Chrome specific gel. There are many different brands that make chrome specific gels, which I do tend to find easier to use. However, you can also use any sort of non-white top coat. You might just have to experiment with it and see if it will apply. So I'm adding a nice even layer onto my nail tip here. Make sure that you get a really smooth, even surface. If there is any texture in your application, then that is going to show in the chrome itself. Once you've applied it, give it a cure according to the directions of the product. And then let's talk about application tools. So there are a few different types of tools that you can use to apply your chrome, namely a silicone tool, an eyeshadow brush, or one of these jelly applicators. The silicone tool is one of my personal favorites for applying isolated chrome because there's just so much precision involved. Here I will show you how it applies to the full nail. It does work well for full nail application, however it just takes a little bit longer since you are using a smaller implement, and it doesn't pick up quite as much chrome as, say, an eyeshadow applicator, so you do need to dip it back into the product to get full coverage over the whole surface of the nail. I do find it to be not quite as messy though as some of the other applicator types, which is a pro in my opinion, and the overall application is quite smooth. For chrome cleanup, I personally recommend these disposable makeup sponges that you can reuse. I just find that they are best for removing all of the extra chrome. You don't want to leave any extra dust on the surface, otherwise when you go to top coat it, it will give more of a glittery effect. Now if the chrome is not sticking to the gel, wipe it down with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol and then go back in with the chrome and it should help it stick. The next type of applicator we'll review is one of these clear jelly stampers or applicator tools. This one that I have here, I will admit it was quite cheap, so as you'll see here, it completely fell apart, but I did take the jelly stamper head and continue to use it for application just to show you what it would look like. Honestly, these are really nice for applying chrome. I do think that they are less messy than an eyeshadow applicator, and I would recommend them as long as you get one that is a little bit better quality than the one I have here and won't fall apart on you. Now the standard application tool is one of these little eyeshadow brushes that comes with most chrome sets. It does work well for full nail application since it is a large tool that covers a lot of area. My issue with it is that I do find you get a lot of chrome fallout as the chrome powder tends to kind of like fly away from the applicator as you are applying it. So I personally prefer some sort of silicone tool that will stick the chrome a little bit better and keep the mess to more of a minimum, but it does still work. You just want to make sure that you're using enough chrome powder as it will start to wipe away the chrome if you're not. And our last application method is just using a gloved finger. Hopefully you are wearing gloves if you are doing nails as much as possible. However, this method is also quite messy and you will have to change your gloves after, so I only recommend it really as a last resort or if you don't have any other tools available to you. Now, we've really only shown chrome applied to a clear top gel, but there are special types of gel that are colored that are still chrome friendly. This one here is one of the butter syrups that I get from Sweetie Nail Supply, and it is a pre-colored top gel, so to speak, that is non-wipe and ready for chrome application. So you just apply it in the same way. You lay down a nice even layer, make sure that there's no texture on the surface, otherwise that is going to show in your chrome, and then you want to give this a full cure according to the directions. Once it's cured, you can just apply the chrome as normal with whatever method you would like. And this will give it more of an opaque base. Depending on the type of chrome, it might also shift the color like we talked about earlier, but it is a nice shortcut if you know that you are going to want to use color under your chromes to get some of these special chrome gels, especially if you are a nail tech who's doing like the glazed look. This is a perfect time saver. Now let's talk about sealing in your chrome. If you're doing a full nail of chrome, sometimes you can get lifting around the edges as the powder starts to separate the top coat. So one thing that I found works pretty well is to give the edges of the nail a decent file. If you're working on a client, you'll only be able to really file along the free edge, but that's fine. Just make sure you're filing down to the nail tip itself That way when you go to top coat around the edges, it will have something to cling to and really seal in that chrome from all sides. Make sure that you dust away all of the debris. And then for actually sealing in your chromes, there are two options that I recommend. Either quite a thin consistency top coat, like this one here from Yogo Mayo. This is the glass top gel. And something really thin like this is going to easily float over the nail and not drag and disturb that chrome surface underneath. The less pulling on the surface, on the powders you do, the best for getting that nice shiny finish. Don't forget to seal around the edges to really lock in that chrome layer and ensure that you have as minimal lifting as possible. You can almost think of it like taping around the edges. If you just stick a piece of tape on top of something, it's not going to hold anything together. You need to connect the edges, then give it a full cure, and you can either go on to add more nail art on top, or that might be the end of your design. You can use a thicker top coat to seal in the chrome. Something like the Yogo Zombie top gel also works really well. If you are going to go the route of a thicker gel polish, just make sure that you are applying it very carefully. You want to use a lot of polish on the brush at first to ensure that you're not dragging the brush through that chrome powder and disturbing that nice even surface underneath. So start with more polish, and you can always wipe away some of the excess. The fewer strokes you can do to apply the top coat, the better, just so you're not disturbing that chrome underneath. And then don't forget to really seal in those edges after you've filed them to make sure that your chrome is not going anywhere. Now let's talk about my favorite type of chrome application, and that is isolated chrome. So let's start with a basic type of isolation. This is actually a reverse process where you start by applying chrome to the whole nail. So here I'm just adding a really nice even coat of that Mayan B chrome gel. I'm going to give it a full cure, and then I'm going to rub on a gold chrome. You can ombre the chromes here at this point if you would like, do multiple colors, do blends of chromes, whatever you want to be the base of your design. Once you have the chrome applied and you wipe away the excess, then you take a clear gel. I prefer a thicker textured gel like this one here, the Jinbei Crazy Top Thick. And then you use whatever art brush you prefer to paint on your design in that clear gel. What you're essentially doing is protecting the areas where you would like the chrome to remain, instead of painting on the design first and then applying the chrome. This is great for layered chrome looks, so if you would like to apply a pattern in one chrome color, you would apply the first color, paint on your design, wipe away the extra chrome, and then reapply another color of chrome and add the secondary design. To wipe away the extra chrome, just make sure that you fully cure your design and go in with some isopropyl alcohol. And the extra chrome that is not protected should wipe away with a little bit of rubbing. And what you are left with is whatever design you had initially painted on. Now with this technique, you are not going to get a lot of texture, meaning if you top coat this, which I do recommend to really seal in those layers, the chrome design is going to look pretty flat to the nail. It's not going to pop as much as if you were to do the next method, which is using gel specifically made for 3D chrome designs. There are a few different types that usually come in clear, black, or white. This is the Cocoas Non-Wipe Accessory Bond. All of them should say non-wipe for chrome application, and typically they're going to be a thick viscosity to help create those 3D looks. The black and white types are great for those Aurora chromes that have the different undertones depending on the base color, but they're also nice for metallic chromes and just slightly shifting the undertone to better fit the design you're going for. So I do recommend a black and white chrome application gel. In terms of clear gels, you have things like the Dayami Mirror Powder Gel, and this is just a really nice thick consistency clear chrome gel that's going to give you texture, but not going to affect the color with any sort of undertone. There are many different options on the market for this type of gel. For an even stiffer textured look, you have the Jello Jello Edge Gel, which is honestly one of my absolute favorites for doing 3D chrome art. It is almost the texture of, I would say, Vaseline, because it really holds its shape, which is amazing for doing those really textured looks, those textured patterns. Similarly, play around with any other sorts of non-wipe texture gels that you have, like this one from the Favori. I realized is not made for chrome, but it definitely can be applied and used for a textured chrome look with a slightly different undertone of color to it. But for all of these gels, you do need to have a nice matte surface to work on. So first option you have is the buffing method. This is where you apply a top coat. I am just using that Mayo glass top from earlier. I like this one because it is a thin consistency, which means I'm not adding a lot of bulk to the nail itself. But you apply your top coat. You want to give it a nice full cure. Honestly, a little bit over curing is fine with this. It will keep the chrome from sticking even more. And then you do want to completely buff the surface. Make sure that there are no shiny patches whatsoever. I recommend a buffing block for this because it is slightly malleable. It will give you a really nice even matte surface without etching too deeply. Make sure to wipe away any sort of dust and debris, and then you are good to apply your 3D gel. This one here is the Dayami Silly Jello. It is, as you can see, a thicker texture, but still self-leveling slightly so that you get really nice, rounded, smoothed shapes. I do recommend the thicker viscosity gels like this for 3D chrome. If you try to use a standard top coat, it is not going to give you as much volume and it's going to be harder to get that 3D effect. And I find that these gels are just formulated to have that chrome stick. And then for application, I do really like a silicone tool for isolated chrome because you can get really nice precision with it and apply just small amounts of chrome and have less fallout and less mess. Of course, I'm cleaning up with that makeup sponge. I find the makeup sponge works best because it's really going to grab onto all of the excess and either burnish it into your chrome design or completely wipe it away. And then when you top this off, you want to make sure that you're floating that top coat over the chrome. And here's a visual comparison of the end results of both methods. Now, if you don't want to take the time to apply a top coat, buff the surface, and then apply your isolated chrome, there are many matte options out there for chrome isolation. This one is the Devox Zero Matte Top, which I really like. It is a thin consistency, meaning it is not going to add a lot of bulk. Another one that I've tried is the Yummy Matte Gel from Ginny and Mayo. This one actually doubles for colored pencil art. However, it is a thicker consistency, so it's going to add a little bit more bulk to the nail. My third and favorite option is the Maymode Matte Top Coat. This is a art gel, so it is for colored pencil art and chrome isolation. It's thinner than the last, although it does leave a slight cloudy cast to the nail. I will showcase how to use this though. You just paint on a nice even thin layer. The thinner the better with this one because it does have a slight cloudy cast to it. But once you're satisfied with your application, give it a full cure and then make sure to wipe it down with isopropyl alcohol as it is a wipe top coat. It is not non-wipe. Then you can go in with whatever 3D chrome gel of your choice and paint it on your design. I'm using that same Stigliello gel just to have consistency between our tests. And once you paint on your design and give it a full cure, go in and apply your chrome on top. You can see here that the chrome powder is already doing a really good job of not clinging or burnishing into that base layer underneath. And a makeup sponge just takes care of any of the extra fallout, no problem at all. And then you want to give that a nice top coat to preserve your chrome pattern. And as you can see here, the only downside to the Maymode is it does leave that slight cloudy cast. So I do not recommend it for clear nails, but it works amazingly over any other type of design. And here's one last comparison between the two methods, both of which have their time and place. Now let's talk about textured chrome. This is a trend that I see going around all over. You want to take a really thick texture gel like the Jello Edge Gel, and one of two implements. You have these really stiff textured brushes, or you can actually use an ombre brush for this method too. I personally prefer the ombre brush with the smoother bristles, and I'll show you why in a second. But you just load up your brush with the texture gel, and then you paint on whichever design you would like across the surface of the nail. I've already buffed the surface so that we can do some isolated chrome. Now, as you can see with the ombre brush, you can get some really pretty curves but still have that nice textured effect, those deep grooves in the gel, whereas with one of these stiffer texture brushes, it's really best for straight lines as it's going to not really flow well with the gel and scrape a lot of it away. Once you've cured your designs though, you can go in with whichever chrome that you would like and just burnish it into that surface. Same method as before. Use whatever tool you prefer and then wipe away the excess with a makeup sponge. Depending on how deep you've made your grooves, it might be better to go in with some sort of softer tool like your fingertip or one of those silicone tools, just to make sure that the chrome gets into all of those grooves. Make sure you're using enough powder as well, and then wipe away the excess and top coat as normal. I think this is a really fun method that leaves a lot of room for experimentation, for layering, for using different colors. You can even do this technique over the entire surface of the nail if you would like a fully textured look. The possibilities really are endless, and I highly suggest experimenting with this sort of design. Speaking of experimenting, you can actually add chrome powder to any sort of gel that you would like. I personally love adding it to a 3D clear clay. This is how you can elevate your clear clays, your colored clays even. You just add a little bit of the chrome powder as if it were glitter, and you give it a good mix, and the end result is this magical, sort of pearlescent, glittery 3D clay that you can use to mold into any sort of shape you would like. Here we're using the Dino Aqua Peach chrome and just tapping the clay into the chrome itself. This will pick up some of that pigment, and then you can use a palette to mix that glitter into the chrome. This is not going to give you a chrome finish, it is going to be more of a glittery effect. For extra dimension, you can mix this with a little bit of extra clear clay and sort of swirl it around for a marbled effect. Same goes for other colored clays if you would like to mix the glitter clay with another color to create that marble look. Definitely a lot to play around with here. And then I'm just applying it to the surface in kind of like a freshwater pearl type of shape. But you can really use this to sculpt anything you would like. Use it with 3D nail molds, hand sculpt a character. This is just a really versatile technique that you can play around with and get a variety of different results from. And in general, it's just a really fun way to elevate your 3D gels, your 3D clays. Once you are happy with the shape, give it a full cure, and then you would top coat it like normal. And you're left with a very sparkly 3D element that's full of lots of dimension because of that swirled chrome powder. So here are all of the designs. I hope you enjoyed this chrome guide. I hope that it was really helpful. I personally love chrome nail art, but I know that it can be a little bit finicky and that there's lots of different things that can go wrong, lots of different products to try. So my goal is to just share what I've learned throughout my years of troubleshooting with chrome powder so far. If you did like the video, please consider giving it a like. Please consider sharing it if you have any other friends who are struggling with chrome application. It really does help out my channel. Otherwise, thank you all for being here. Let me know what other kinds of guides you would be interested in. But I hope you are having a wonderful day wherever you are, and I will see you for the next video. Bye.